Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another video. Today I thought I'd be doing some extra test hands on the vampires. I wanted to do a bit more extras just in case that we could maybe go for a few more alternative plays. This is not just some generic zombie deck, it is actually mixing in the vampire archetype itself. As a result, there is a bit more extensive plays out there, and I'm hoping that they might actually be able to occur in these particular test hands, or at least in this particular video. But before I get started, let me remind you guys to drop a like, share, comment and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and also hit that bell notification. Without further ado, let's begin. Alright, so this is actually pretty crazy. I mean, it is obviously something that is meant to be going first anyway, so I don't really have too much of an issue with this. Though I wish we could actually make the Shadow Vampire a bit more viable. We could still definitely do stuff. I mean, starting off with Gozuki, you don't realize its effect allows you to actually just ditch off a card to the graveyard. So in this case, what better card to actually ditch off than to go for your Vampire Familiar? I mean, with that being said, you pretty much can use Vampire Familiar's effect to bring it back, and of course you could then ditch off your Domination. Of course, in that particular circumstance it doesn't seem as good, but let's do this instead, right? Let's say we go for the Retainer instead, and in this case Retainer's effect will likewise send a Domination to the grave, and this will allow you to then search out your domain. So let's search for that. Where is it? Right over here. So we have our domain, and of course Retainer special summoned out. It's up to you what you want to put it in, attack or defense, doesn't really matter, because you're going to activate your domain right now. Pay 500 and you can summon out your Shadow Vampire. Of course you still have to tribute, so we're going to tribute off the Retainer, gets banished, and Shadow Vampire gets the special summon something. So in this case, what do you want to bring out? Well, it's up to you. If you bring out Familiar, you could add more cards, and in turn you'd be able to further extend the board on the following turn. However, you could also bring out Scarlet Scourge, but then you would have nothing to bring out. So as you can see, it does change up what you could do. Normally I do go for the Scarlet Scourge just because it's kind of like the ace of the deck, but in this case the MVP might actually have to be the Familiar. Although I could go for Fraulein as well, that's not too bad of an option. Could also go for Sorcerer and set yourself up for the following turn, but yeah, I actually do think that the best option would be to go for the Familiar, and then Familiar would use its effect allowing you to search for a card. In this case we get our Scarlet Scourge, just a nice card to follow up on. Of course, if you want to be really defensive, you can always just add the Fraulein, and that would really deter your opponent from actually just attacking into you recklessly, because you essentially get a free summon and pull off a bunch of shenanigans. But you do have over here the Familiar, and since this wasn't summoned out from the grave, it won't get banished when it leaves the field. So you just keep this particular board just like so. Gozuki also has its own effect as well, which is pretty nice, but overall your opponent doesn't know what you have as for your traps. So Domination is basically a Solemn Judgment, and we also have the Swallow Slash, which is essentially just Tribute 1, Pop 2, Great Disruption. So definitely a fantastic start, and more centered around the vampires as opposed to generic zombies. Wow, that's actually quite interesting. Now keep in mind we are going second this time. I'm planning on actually alternating first, second, but yeah, with this being said, we are obviously trying to aim for more so an OTK, so definitely better to start with the Scarlet Scourge here. So we go for Solitaire, get it to the grave. It's essentially just fodder, by the way, or at least banish fodder when we get to it later, but we'll go for the Unizombie for now. Unizombie could easily just discard this Unizombie, but we'll come back to it later. We'll just use this Unizombie first, and we could easily get rid of Gozuki. Gozuki's effect actually allows you to ditch off. Oh, that's interesting. We don't actually have to go for the Gozuki right away. I was thinking we do have 2 domains, that's pretty nice. So perhaps we could actually go for a familiar. That might not be the worst option. So we simply go for familiar, and we could use familiar's effect to special summon itself back out, of course, sending a domain to the grave. It then allows us to search. In this case, we get to add a monster. What do we want to add? We have the choice of Voivode, which is not too bad of an option actually. But then again, we could go for some other options too. Perhaps it's not the worst option for us to potentially go for a retainer to the hand. That's not a bad option either, because you could take Unizombie and ditch off the retainer, or I'm actually thinking let's bring up Voivode. Unizombie ditches off Voivode to the graveyard. This becomes a level 5, so that's great, of course. Level 5, and that's only a level 1, so obviously you can't do anything. We simply activate Desire, which allows us to ditch off 1 more card to the graveyard. We can ditch off the retainer. I mean, it's fine either way, right? You could also ditch off a few other cards, but I think it's just a great card to save up. This is now level 2, so with that being said, you simply synchro summon these 2. And you go for your... Let's see here, we go for Red Eyes Necrozombie. An interesting thing you could actually do is, instead of discarding the retainer to the grave, you could actually just go for something else. So perhaps in this case, instead of going for your synchro summon, perhaps I'll not ditch off the retainer, but I'll ditch off a level 4 instead. So we go for the sorcerer, and by doing so we can banish off the sorcerer, activate domain first, go for our Scarlet Scourge, pay 1,000, bring back our Voivode, of course. But with that being said, we take Familiar and Unizombie, and we simply can link them away. Of course, you're supposed to bring out Voivode afterwards, but we could easily go for the Sucker play again, and of course draw a card. So I'm going to shuffle my deck. Alright, and we draw a card. We get here Super Poly, not bad at all, definitely very nice. Attack with Scarlet Scourge, steal your opponent's monsters. Sucker attacks, Voivode attacks. Afterwards, you simply just activate the Super Poly. During the battle phase, discard your Unizombie, and you simply just have plenty of targets to go for here. You have your own cards, but you could also just use your opponent's monsters as well. Keep in mind you have plenty of options available, so do not hesitate whatsoever. Definitely very nice here, very powerful, and definitely suitable for turn 2. Alright, so here's a different opening hand over here. Definitely very nice, because 1-for-1 is something that we rarely get to start off with, but you know what, we could definitely go with it. I'm going to start off here with the 1-for-1, ditch off the Familiar, ironically, and search out, or at least special summon out, our other copy of Familiar. So it does hold a bit of irony in it, of course, but we search for it, we get our retainer, and we simply use the other Familiar's effect, ditch off retainer. We now have 2 of these. One of them will get banished, the other one stays in the grave. That's great, of course, but you could then just link summon these 2. So 1 banished, 1 to the grave, bring out our Sucker, and of course we have retainer's effect, allowing us to ditch off our Scarlet Scourge, just the 1 copy, or the 1 spare we have. Bring this out. Retainer and Sucker has both their effects to activate, chain link 1 and 2. So we simply go for retainer first, allowing us to then search our domain, and Sucker of course allows us to draw after we shuffle. Alright, Alright, so we draw 1 for Sucker. We get Domination, very powerful, definitely very nice there. So now we can activate our domain, and of course, with that being said, we can go with... You know what's interesting? We could actually keep this Scarlet Scourge and then instead discard Fraulein, because we'll summon it anyway, right? So what I mean by this is we tribute off the Retainer, that gets banished off, we summon out the Scarlet Scourge, and that brings us Fraulein, whichever position you want it in. But yeah, it's definitely very nice like that. Of course, not the most overwhelming of attacks, but with the Scarlet Scourge, you could still take one of your opponent's monsters potentially, and of course you gain your life back with Domain. You could also set your Domination as well, but keep in mind, I just realized we are going first, not going second, so to have this field like this is very powerful. Of course, we still have the extra Familiar out, so what we could simply do is use its effect on the following turn, send one of our potential options, and search for more monsters. Of course, we still have Scarlet Scourge on the following turn to pretty much make our plays. So overall, this is looking fantastic. Alright, so now we're going second again, of course, but this is not too bad at all. Could definitely work with this. Go for the Uni-Zombie, of course. Uni-Zombie allows us to ditch off certain cards, so in this case we have Familiar over here, so why not ditch off the Retainer from the graveyard, bring out Retainer by sending off our Familiar, and of course Retainer allows us to search. What do we have over here? This is very interesting. It looks like we have nothing, but we could still definitely add our Scarlet Scourge. And of course, with that being said, we can now send the Retainer to the graveyard. That is an option, of course. I mean, you could easily send the Fraulein to the grave and bring out Familiar. Oh, sorry, no, Scarlet Scourge is searched after with the Familiar, but Retainer searches off our domain. My apologies, but it's still the same thing happening anyway. You could use Familiar's effect, send off Fraulein, and then add your Scarlet Scourge, so it would be the same thing either way. But with that being said, Uni-Zombie is currently just a level 4, so unfortunately we can't really do too much right now, but we can definitely take the Familiar and the Retainer and simply link them away, allowing us to go for our Sucker. And of course, with that being said, we could activate our domain and tribute off the Uni-Zombie just to summon out our Scarlet Scourge, which will in turn bring us out our Fraulein, and so Sucker allows us to draw. And we draw one card, we get Jacobolan. Not the most ideal draw, but I guess there's nothing we could really do about it. If you wanted to, you could actually go for the Monster Reborn, bring back our Uni-Zombie, and of course Uni-Zombie and the Fraulein. Uni-Zombie is back to 3, so together with the Fraulein, you could actually just go for your level 8. Void Ogre won't do much, but think about Chaos Ruler and the potential of that, and think about your Shogun Saga. But remember, Uni-Zombie did use its effect, so you can't attack with non-zombie monsters. So for that, we only have one option really, and that would be the Shogun Saga. But that's still a really great card. Shogun Saga is really powerful. Of course, we still have Caught by the Grave, Set Down, and Domination of course as well. So that's fantastic. Jacobolan's just a follow-up, but all of these attacks are definitely fantastic as well. But with that being said, this was pretty much it for the Testhands for Vampires. I just thought I'd make something to cap it off, and I thought this one actually did turn out well. So hope you guys actually enjoyed that, and thanks very much for actually joining me today. I hope you all have a fantastic day. I'll see you all next time.